Happy Saturday. My name is Stacey Leanne. I love makeup, I love true crime, and I am a huge horror fan. So if that sounds like you, come hang out on a Saturday. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode of my series, Horror Movies Inspired by True Crime. In this week's episode, we will be talking about the Lake Bodom murders, which inspired my personal favourite, Friday the 13th. Jason Voorhees is very much an iconic horror character for me. I may absolutely butcher these names, so I apologise in advance. Everything I use will be listed in the description box down below, but I of course will be going in with my Friday the 13th palette from Glamlight. Let's get into it. Saturday, June 5th, 1960, 4 teenagers camped along the shores of Lake Bodom. Malia Imero Bjorklund and Anya Tuluki Mackie, both aged 15, and their boyfriends Seppel Antaro Boisman and Noel Wilhelm Gustafsson, both aged 18. I'm so sorry if I butchered those names. It is reported that on June the 4th, the couple arrived, set up their tent at 10:30. They all retired to bed. What happened in the early hours of June 6th is still a mystery. I cannot talk and do any kind of liner. This is definitely a trust the process kind of makeup. So a man who had been swimming in Lake Bodom made the gruesome discovery. He stumbled upon what appeared to be 4 bodies. This was around 11 AM. Mackie and Boisman lay deceased inside of the tent, whilst the still alive Gustafsson laid on top of the tent. Now, all possessed multiple stab wounds. It is reported the 3 were killed by stabbing and blunt force trauma. Now, Gustafsson, he was found with fractures to his facial bones and stab wounds. The tent was absolutely torn apart and some of their possessions were missing. Now, Gustafsson, he claimed to have absolutely no memory of the attack, which is kind of understandable when you go something this traumatic. All he remembered was the attacker was in all black. He was then taken to the hospital. I hope he got some, like, counselling or something, because it's truly awful what he went through. So now on to the investigation. The police had very little to go on, as obviously the surviving victim had no memory of it, so they actually called upon the military to help with the search and to drag the lake to see if they could find the murder weapon. The murder weapon was never found. However, the investigation determined the murder weapon was most likely a knife with a blunt object. They couldn't determine which weapon fatally wounded the victims. It's the 1960s. Remember, they don't have what we have nowadays. By the way, I really like this primer. Look how tacky it is. We love it. However, allegedly, the killer did wear Gustafsson's shoes, and Bjorklund was the most injured among the victims. Compared to the others, she was stabbed multiple times. It is believed that the authorities were really careless with the crime scene, and it was trampled by investigators, the press, and the concerned public. Now we can move on to the suspects. So the first suspect was a violent criminal named Pentiti Soinen. I'll put it up here. He claimed responsibility first. He lived near the murder site. However, he would have been 14 at the time and unlikely able to overpower a bunch of teenagers, but also leave no trace evidence. So on to the second suspect, Carl Vanderniel Goldstrom. He was the police's most viable suspect. Goldstrom confessed to the murders while intoxicated to one of his neighbours, although he later denied this. Goldstrom's wife actually gave him an alibi and said that she was in bed with him all night. Sometime later, she did actually retract her statement, saying that he threatened to if she implicated him. Some of the locals also claimed to see Goldstrom in the early hours of the morning on June 6th, but because of his volatile nature, they just didn't come forward. They were too scared. Another friend of Goldstrom also alleged that he confessed to the murders, and he asked what he should do. Now, the friend turned round and said, "You should drown yourself." Now, I don't know about you, but I'd be like, turn yourself into the police, you know, pay for your crimes, not go and drown yourself. Like, how bizarre is that? To me, anyway. Goldstrom, not wanting to spend the rest of his life in prison, he did go and do it. He went to the lake and, yeah. And so, if he did do it, obviously there's no way to know. It's crazy to me. That was suspect number 2. I mean, if we did do it, obviously, we'd never know. So on to the third. So the third suspect was a guy called Hans Assmann. What a name. I could do a whole separate video on this guy, see if there's a horror movie that's inspired by him. But anyway, Assmann arrived at Helsinki Surgical Hospital on June 6, extremely delirious. His clothes were covered in red stains and his hands were covered in dirt. 2 children claimed to have seen a blonde man fleeing from the Lake Bodom area. Many detectives did actually believe that Assmann was involved in the killings, but after a brief questioning, police didn't pursue him any further. They never took his stained clothes for examination, despite the doctor's insistence that it was in fact blood. Assmann did raise other red flags. After seeing the news report and the description, Assmann actually shaved off his blonde hair. Many consider his potential connections are the reason that the police did dismiss him as a suspect. The final suspect was actually Gustafsson himself, the only survivor. After Lake Bodom, Gustafsson lived a normal life. For over 40 years, he got married, he had children, he retired. In 2004, Finnish police reopened the case based on the discovery of new DNA evidence. The theory which police put forward was Gustafsson erupted into a jealous rage. Broken jaw which he sustained was the result of a fight with Boisman, his best friend, and then he arranged the crime scene. He obviously denied killing the 2 15-year-olds and his best friend, and with no recollection of what actually happened, and no specific explanation as why he would explode in such a manner, Gustafsson's lawyer argued that the murder were committed by one or more unknown perpetrators. With such severe injuries, his lawyer argued that he wouldn't be able to... One moment. The lawyer argued that the attacks just wouldn't have been made possible. On October the 7th, 2005, Gustafsson was exonerated and awarded 5 figures in damages after being in custody for around 6 months. The community also felt that Gustafsson was innocent, and it's really nice that they kind of supported him, especially going through something so horrific and then being accused. You can't imagine. They also felt that the police would have charged him long ago. So for over 50 years, parents have warned their children to be on their best behaviour, or they could fall victim to the phantom Bodom Lake killer, who has become a supernatural figure who attacks unruly children. A bit childhood trauma to get the kids to behave. Parents never miss a beat. You can actually visit the actual tent. It is on display in a police museum in Tampere, Finland. The Lake Bodom murder case is one of the most infamous unsolved homicide cases in Finland. I personally think that there are two viable suspects in this, but what do you think? If there is a story that you want me to talk about, let me know in the comments, and I will see you next week.